Now, Ukraine's allies have pledged several $billions in non-military aid to help rebuild the country and weed out corruption. The donations were announced at a conference in London. Russia's invasion has damaged or destroyed staggering amounts of Ukraine's infrastructure and housing. And Kiev says that it is facing the largest reconstruction project in Europe since the Second World War.
It has been called Europe's new Marshall Plan, the largest reconstruction project on the continent since World War II. At a fundraising conference in London, Ukraine's president says there is more to it than just bricks and mortar.
The eyes of the world are looking at us and at whether we will defeat Russian aggression exactly as freedom deserves to win, that is without compromising our values. Also, the world is watching to see if we will restore normal life in such a way that our transformation will land an ideological defeat on the aggressor.
The host of the conference announced UK's backing for Ukraine to the tune of £3 billion.
With this and everything that we do here, we are sending a message that our support on the battlefield and beyond cannot be outlasted, and that Ukraine's incredible spirit will prevail.
EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen made an appeal to private investors to help in the reconstruction efforts.
Together we gather here. We need the private sector to step into, because it is you, the private sector, with your invaluable expertise and your financial firepower that will help Ukraine realize its dreams. You're here today at this conference, and we really need you, and we know we can rely on you.
While the German foreign minister called for the need to link Ukraine's recovery to its EU accession process.
To make recovery a truly European endeavor.
The World Bank estimates that the reconstruction effort will cost more than $400 billion, a figure that will only rise as the war grinds on.
And for more on this, I'm joined now by DW Special Correspondent Aya Ibrahim, who is in Kiev. Aya, the countries have already pledged billions of dollars in additional help for Ukraine yesterday. How is this being received now in Kiev?
I would say with cautious optimism, Sarah. I mean, Ukraine certainly sees itself as a partner in this conference and not merely as a recipient of aid or help. The conference was co-hosted by Ukrainian President Zelensky and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. And, you know, in his video address to participants, President Zelensky urged the delegates to see the, investment opportunity and economic opportunity in his country as it still lies in ruins. But there was also a message of, that he also wants Western allies and Western partners to follow up their promises with action and investment, and he wants to see it fast as well, saying that visions have to turn into agreements and agreements have to turn into projects. So there's a sense of optimism, appreciation, but also a sense of urgency because Ukraine needs all the help that it can get from its Western allies right now.
How will the money be used?
Everything, Sarah. I mean, we talk a lot about the kind of robust military aid that Ukraine receives from its Western allies, but it also needs help with everything else. In 2022, the Ukrainian economy shrunk by about 30% due to this war. So we're talking about help with things like running schools, hospitals, basic infrastructure, day-to-day rebuilding of civilian infrastructure that has been damaged by the war and attacks as well. But also a key word in what Ukraine needs help with is confidence for private investors. I mean, we heard Ursula von der Leyen there talking about the importance of the private sector, and what the governments in the West can do is provide guarantees and security for these private investors so that they can come here and confidently invest, because this is still an extremely volatile situation. And so there's a whole host of things that these pledges will be helping with here in Ukraine, from the smallest to the absolute biggest items.
EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced yesterday that Russian assets are to benefit Ukraine. How exactly is that supposed to work, Aya, especially considering, that legal experts have said that the ability to do this is not necessarily clear-cut.
That is the billion euro question, if you will. I mean, this is by no means a new idea. There is a consensus among Western allies in the EU that since Russia started this war, Russia is the aggressor. Well, Russia has to pay for it. But the legality around seizing assets and then using that for rebuilding is still really murky and not quite defined yet. There are fears that this might set dangerous precedents in this particular case. But this, the idea has been floating around since February. Russian assets in the West are estimated to be around 300 billion, the ones that have been seized, and the Reconstruction bill is now a little bit over $400 billion. So it is a very tempting idea, but so far we don't really have the details about how this could be implemented.
DW Special Correspondent Aya Ibrahim, thank you. To alleviate strain on Ukrainian hospitals as the fighting continues, the European Union has been coordinating evacuations of sick and wounded people to hospitals across Europe. So far, more than 2,200 patients were brought to European countries for treatment. Many of them passed through an evacuation hub in Poland. Now, due to the closure of Ukrainian airspace, one Polish airport in Rzeszów serves as the closest location from which they can be airlifted. Here's more.
Arrived in safety. The sick and wounded from Ukraine are brought to the EU medical evacuation hub in Rzeszów, Poland. Many of them are wounded soldiers, like Andrei Vladikov, who lost one of his hands in a Russian assault on his unit's positions.
A grenade was shot at me. It was flying in my direction, and I saw it when it was already close. I could only extend my hand and deflect the grenade, but my hand was torn off.
The hub is located just 70 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border. From here, patients are airlifted to hospitals across Europe. Ukrainian medics bring them by ambulance across the border.
This is one of the most important places we can bring patients to now. It's extremely important for Ukraine, and we are very grateful to our Polish colleagues and everyone who participated in organising this facility.
So far, over 600 people have passed through the hub on their way to receiving treatment. Doctors from the Polish Centre for International Aid attend to patients with diverse needs.
On the one hand, we have trauma patients, that is, soldiers. Most of them are very young. Some have only recently become adults. On the other hand, there are civilians who cannot receive medical assistance in Ukraine, particularly patients with cancer.
Soldier Andrei Vladikov is set to receive a prosthesis in Spain.
You are coming to Spain tomorrow.
I'm very happy. I never thought that I would be offered a prosthesis.
As the Ukrainian medics return to their country, Andrei is already contemplating doing the same.
I hope to receive a good prosthesis and return to the fight, because the aggressor has taken over our country. I want to help my people. We are a free people, so I will continue fighting.
Before that's possible, he's leaving with other soldiers for treatment in Spain. But he will pass through the hub one more time on his way back to Ukraine.